Okay, looks like YouTube stopped my video for the second time, and I have no idea why. I think the algorithm is broken or something. I don't think it works because it's telling me that it's detecting audio. There's no audio at all. I'm not playing audio. This is crazy. I mean, there's a lot of people online that I know that complain about YouTube, and they say that YouTube is their copyright algorithm is going crazy, and if people are getting in trouble for the most innocuous things, for like two notes in the background. If it plays in the background, they're going to get copyright attacked, and I'm like, there's literally nothing. There's no music here, and there's no video anywhere. I'm not using any video. I don't know. I don't know what this is all about. This is nuts. Anyway, I'm just trying to talk about my own book. In fact, this is probably the least copyrighted content on all of YouTube, because you go on YouTube and everyone's talking about Star Wars and Star Trek and TV shows, and you're putting clips of TV shows and clips of movies that they don't like, and none of that's copyrighted. But me, there's nothing here. I'm not talking or showing any videos of any show or movie or any popular thing. I'm talking about my own book. This is a book. This is The Princess of Aenyya, and this is something that belongs to, I don't know if anyone's going to watch this video, but anyway, I'll try this again. I'm wearing a different shirt, if you notice. Originally, I had a Dungeons and Dragons shirt. I don't know if that's not allowed to wear a Dungeons and Dragons shirt. I've seen people, though, wear D&D shirts in the past, so maybe that's what it was detecting. I don't know, but I didn't think a shirt gets flagged for copyright. I mean, you can go outside and wear that shirt in public, so I don't know. It's free advertising. You would think Wizards of the Coast would want people to be wearing their shirt to advertise their game, but whatever. Hey, so basically, I want to talk about Aenyya. Now, Aenyya is something that I'd like to say I've been working on it for 20 years, but in reality, I've been working on it my entire life. I've been working on it since I was a child, because I spent my entire life learning how to write stories. And this is something that kind of aggravates me, because I know that some people, they will start writing fiction in their 20s and in their 30s. And I'm not saying that you can't be a great writer and start later in life. You definitely can. But I don't think you can be a good writer without any practice. And so I had to write a lot of bad novels and a lot of bad stories before I could even really get to the point where I could write my first book, which is actually The Dark Age of Aenyya. And even that book, which I actually published, even that book ended up getting, shelved. And so some people still, they email me, they go, oh, I want to read The Dark Age of Aenyya. I want to read the first in the series. And I'm like, no, that's just kind of like a rough draft. I don't want to show that to anybody. It is entertaining, and a lot of people read The Dark Age of Aenyya when it came out, and they really enjoyed it. And I did get some good comments about The Dark Age of Aenyya. But still, I felt like I could do better. And so I spent almost 10 years reworking that into what became Ages of Aenyya. And basically, I was sowing the seeds for the world that is Aenyya. It's a planet. It's a fantasy. It's a specific genre called sword and planet, which you don't see a lot of. That used to be more popular back in like the 1930s and 40s, and before then, it started with like Edgar Rice Burroughs, where in the Princess of Mars, and John Carter was the hero, and he has stories where you will go to different planets, but it had more of a fantasy theme than a science fiction theme. And this is something that's kind of not as popular today, but I really love it, because when I read something like Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings, I often ask myself, where are these places? Where is Middle Earth exactly? Is Middle Earth is it on a planet? Are there stars? Are there Are there other planets in that universe? Can you, if you take a boat and you sail in one direction, are you going to go around and go back to the other side of Middle Earth? I mean, and of course, I know a lot of people that read fantasy, they kind of shut off that part of their brains and say, you know what, it doesn't matter. Let's not even think about that. But for me, that's important. I can't turn off sort of the scientific part of my brain, and it's not because I can't just enjoy fantasy on its face, but it's that I like asking those questions. I enjoy asking, well, what happens if you hop in a spaceship and fly up? What is this cosmology like? It's like with Westeros. I often wonder, well, winter only comes along every so many years. It's very erratic. And the question is, well, why is that? Why is it that the seasons are so erratic in the Game of Thrones universe? And I think that someone who is interested in science kind of wants those questions answered in a more satisfying way than just say, well, it's magic. It's just magic. I never really liked that. But I love fantasy more than science fiction, because I think science fiction, I feel like things are just too easy. You just can come up with technological innovations, and you don't have to worry about things like, well, we need to walk to Mount Doom. That's walking to Mount Doom makes for a great adventure. But if you have a teleporter like on Star Trek, you can just, Frodo and Sam could just beam to Mount Doom and build her there and throw the rings in. So it just it eliminates a lot of conflict and a lot of potential drama when you have these technological innovations that can solve so many problems, like healing and creating a habitat and getting food. And I mean, there's so many things that technology kind of provides for us. So that's why I like the fantasy genre. And that's kind of what I've done with the Aenya series, is I think I've combined the best elements of fantasy and the best elements of science fiction. So that's why that excites me. Now, what I wanted to show you is something like the Princess of Aenya. It took a lot of work to get there. So my process, my writing process, is I start off with, I'm trying to find it now. I start off with a little binder. I get these little binders here from Barnes and Nobles, which I think are really beautiful. It looks like a cool journal from the past. And as you can see, I have a lot of notes. These are a lot of my notes, and sometimes I'll mark out ideas that I don't like, and I'll keep ideas that I do like. But there's a lot of brainstorming going on, and this brainstorming goes on for years. This is a years-long process where I'm thinking about a story, and I come up with a cool idea or a cool plot point or a cool character or just any little thing that can make that world more interesting, more rich. And I write it down in this binder, and I do this for at least a year before I even start writing anything down. And then when I actually get into the writing phase, hold on a second. Okay, I just knocked over about 1,000. Ah, boy. I have a camera over here. So before I get into when I start the writing phase, I end up with something like this. This is just a really big binder that I like to print out, because when I like to edit something, I like to give people a physical copy that they can actually read. So that because I notice that when you read something in book form, when you're looking at an actual page, your brain tends to process it a little differently than it would if you're just looking at a computer screen. Something about looking at a screen, the words seem somewhat more transitory. They seem less set in stone. But when something's printed on a page, you feel like there's a greater permanence there. And I think your brain just sort of processes a little differently. So that's why I think it's really important to actually print things out. So this is the Princess of Aenia. And it looks really, really thick because it's not double sided. But this is the original. Also, I also think too that there's some kind of crazy global computer virus that destroys everything on all my backups, and my computer, my hard drive just wipes everything out. It's safe, because I got 5 years of work in this, and that's about how long it took me. It took me about 2.5 years to actually get the writing done, going back and forth with various beta readers who would give me their input and their advice. And then the final story is done and get to the last chapter. And then I had to go back and from the beginning, and I had to edit the story again. Usually I'll spend about, one week just writing a chapter, and then I'll spend another week editing a chapter. And then at the end of the year, I'll kind of go back to the beginning, read the whole thing from scratch, and do another round of editing. And this includes the editing with the beta readers. And then I will give each chapter to a professional editor. Now, a lot of people don't want to hire professional editors because they're very, very expensive, especially if you get a good editor. We're not talking about someone that is just looking for grammatical mistakes and spelling mistakes. We're talking about somebody who will actually go through the story, and they'll actually read everything. They'll actually read everything in the story in detail, and they will give you advice on the story, on the plot points, on the character points, on the style, on the quality of the writing. They'll give you really in-depth notes, and that is expensive. But I think it's important to get a professional to look at it, because you're always struggling with, whenever you're writing, I think the biggest challenge, I think, for any writer is struggling with subjectivity. Because being that you're writing your own story, you're writing something that you enjoy. You're writing something that gets you excited, something that you're interested in, something that makes sense to you because it came out of your head. And no matter how good you are at doing that, it's really impossible to read a story as though you haven't written it. And I think this is what all of the YouTube critics on YouTube don't fully understand when they're, watching, let's say The Rise of Skywalker, and they're saying, oh, this is so stupid, and, how could J.J. Abrams have come up with all these dumb ideas, or why did Disney come up with all these dumb ideas? And it's so obvious to the critic that this is a stupid idea or this doesn't make any sense. But to the creator, it isn't so obvious, because the person that created the story or the movie, for them, they know what they mean, and they know what makes sense. They know what makes sense to them. But they're unable to see it from the perspective of a different person. And so this is really the struggle of every creative person, is battling your own subjectivity, making something that not only gets you excited, not only makes sense to you, but gets other people excited and gets other people enthusiastic. There might be a chapter that, brings a tear to your eye as a writer, but then you'll hand it off to somebody else and be like, I don't really feel anything, or I don't really get it, or I'm not getting the same emotion that you were getting, or that you intended to be getting. That's why it's really important to get a professional to look at your content, to tell you, yeah, I get what you're getting. I'm feeling the same thing. I'm getting the same emotional beats that you're experiencing. I think that's important. By the way, my editor she's a great editor. Her name is Ava Koibian. And I give her a lot of credit because she's very dedicated, and she gives me tons and tons of notes. The amount of notes that she gives me probably could make a novella, on its own. And they're very insightful. They're very in depth, and I think she really helped me to craft an even better story. So as good as you think your writing is, if you want your story to be that much better, And my goal is to write something. And that's one thing I notice about a lot of people. I don't know who's going to be watching this. I doubt hardly anyone's going to be watching this. But I noticed that different writers have different goals in mind. They have different ambitions. I think some writers, they're just, it's just a hobby. They're just doing something that just they just want to do something to pass the time. They got a day job, and then at night they're bored. They want to do something besides watch YouTube, so they write books, and they get it published on Amazon, and that's fine. It's fine to do that. There are people out there that maybe they just want to make a lot of money, and so they end up writing some sort of smutty story about something sexual or something that's kind of titillating, and they know that there's a market for that, and they make money off of that. They know that their book will never be a bestseller. They know that it'll never become a Barnes and Noble classic. They know that, and they don't care. For me, I set the bar really, really high for myself, and I think that's why I get very discouraged because I'm aiming for the top rung. I'm aiming for like the Olympics of literature. I think that my books, at least my latest book, The Princess of AENYA, here's the cover again, by the beautiful cover, I think. I think that, I would like this book to be on the shelf. I'm not saying it's as good as those other books, but I do think that I would like this book to be on the shelf with other fantasy classics. I would like, if you have a collection of fantasy books and you have The Hobbit, and you have, The Never-Ending Story, and you have The Last Unicorn, and other sort of fanciful, inspiring books. I would like this book to be right there with those books. Now you might say, okay, Nick, you're being an egomaniac. There's no way your book is as good as those books. Well, maybe not. I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying The Prince of AENYA is that good. I'm saying that's what I'm trying. That's what I'm aiming for. That's what I'm trying to do. That's my goal. And if it turns out that this book isn't very good and people don't like it that much, then I'll try to learn from that. And with my next book, I'll try even harder to create the best product I can, because as a writer, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to inspire people. I'm trying to move people emotionally. And I think that's something that this book is capable of doing, because I have a lot of beta readers who have read this, and they've given me some really high praise. They've told me that this is a really good book. One person said it was inspiring. It was one of the best fantasy books they've read in a long time. So, but again, I feel like people need to read this. And this is the struggle. It's like, I just want to read this, please. I don't know. Like sometimes I just want to tie some people to a chair and just be like, you're going to read this book, because people won't give you a chance. And I don't blame them, because there's so much stuff to do nowadays. There's so many, there's YouTube videos to watch and Netflix shows to watch and other books to read. You go to the bookstore and you're just bombarded with books. And at this point, you might be saying, well, gee, Nick, if your book is so good, why aren't you published? Why aren't you in the bookstore? And I think what people don't realize is that agents and publishers, they don't even look at your book. You send them a one-page letter and you say, hey, hey, my name is Nick Alamonis. I wrote this story, and this is what it's about. And they say, okay, they don't even respond to you. They don't even respond. It's not like anyone is actually reading the book. None of these, Tor and Bantam and all these big companies, they're not reading these books. They don't have time for that. They don't have time to actually read anything and read it and say, it's not really good. It's not really good enough. But I do feel like, Tor, Bantam, Doubleday, any of you big companies out there, if you work for these companies, I'm telling you, I feel fairly confident that if you actually read my book, you will be like, this is pretty good. This is a good book. Now, does that mean it'll sell? I don't know. Because that's what they're interested in. They're interested in what is trending. And if I ever do get a response from a publisher, it's always the same. I always get the same line. This is not trending. That's it. They want things that are currently popular or currently selling. So after like 50 Shades of Grey, everybody wanted bondage porn. That's what everybody wanted. They wanted stories like 50 Shades of Grey. After Harry Potter, everybody wanted a Harry Potter-like story. I won't say that the Princess of Aenyas is nothing like what is popular. Actually, I think if you like Game of Thrones, I think you would enjoy this. I think it's like Game of Thrones, but it's less cynical. I always found Game of Thrones to be very dark and kind of depressing because there are so few characters in there that you really can, that at least I could identify with, because everyone is kind of a jerk in that world. And so I think that if you were to imagine a Game of Thrones-like setting, where sure there's a lot of evil people, there's a lot of terrible people. I'm not saying that it's all sunshine and rainbows in my book. In fact, there's a character, Zabos, who has been compared to by my fans who are also Game of Thrones fans. I have a lot of those. They love Game of Thrones and they love my work. And they told me, yeah, like Zabos is as bad as Ramsay Bolton. It's in that level of awfulness. So I do have some villains that could give the Game of Thrones cast a run for their money. But there's also characters in there that are very likable and identifiable, characters you'd want to follow. So I think that if you enjoy Game of Thrones, if you enjoy fantasy, if you enjoy classics like The Last Unicorn, The Never-Ending Story, stories that give you sort of a tingly, inspiring feeling, I think that you would really love this book. I think this book has all of those things. So that's pretty much what I want to talk to you. I also wanted to show you this, which just collapsed, by the way, as I was talking. I just got these bookmarks here. You can see that. Some new bookmarks, and it says, believe in magic, believe in love, believe in radio. And on the back, it explains a little bit about the story of the Princess of Aenyas. So if you were to order my book from my website, which is nickalamonos.com, you can learn more about the story. You can see artwork based on the story. You can read bios about the characters, about the races of that world, the way that planet functions. And if you order from my website, I will send along this bookmark. So that's nice. You can also get my original book, Ages of Aenyas, along with Princess of Aenyas. You can get both of those books for $20. It's a double deal, and you can see that at nickalamonos.com. So this is a new thing I'm starting. I don't know if it's going to work. It does look like YouTube stopped flagging me. So I guess they didn't like my shirt. That's crazy that YouTube has a program that looks at what people are wearing and says you can't wear that shirt. That's a little nuts. But whatever. I guess from now on I won't wear shirts with graphics on them. I don't know. But yeah. So I want to be doing this more often. I want to do more videos like this. I don't know if it's going to be popular, but I want to do more videos like this where I talk about my book and my inspiration and just things about it, and we'll see how this goes. But just so you know, here it is again, The Princess of Aenyas. It's I'm telling you guys, I really think it's a great story, and I really think that you should pick it up and read it. And if you do read it, please help me out by going to Amazon and leaving a review. Okay? So if you enjoyed this video, hope you did. Thank you for watching. Thanks.